Recruitment podcast. Episode, what is this?
225.
I'm here tonight with Jesus Schneiderman.
Bless you all.
And we've got Philip Dassing.
What's up?
Alexis Schlegel.
Hello, everybody.
And Arvid Vora is back on the Punk Rock Libertarians podcast.
Awesome to be here, guys.
Hell yeah. It's awesome to have you, Arvid. And you're wearing a suit in July.
I gotta represent the Libertarian Party. There's a lot of folks that say you need to be respectable, and I'm not gonna tone my rhetoric down, so I'll just tone my clothing up.
Oh, we love you. We love you. I'm just pointing out that this is a hardcore motherfucker. He shows up in a suit in July.
Mm-hmm.
Dedication.
Oh yeah, it's an honor to have you once again in Anarchy Basement. And I guess tonight you wanted to talk about online censorship.
I want to talk about all kinds of censorship. I want to talk about social censorship. I want to talk about some of the change that we're seeing in politics. And I want to get this idea out there that where this was once a country of debate, right, it's now become a sort of a war of who can shut the other people up. And I think it's really, we're really seeing a kind of information that's coming out. That, you guys being banned, right? You guys being deplatformed. Our Facebook ads being banned. Most recently, me being banned from a local dance event, a local social dance event, not for anything I did or said there, but for my political Facebook post had made people who are on welfare feel unsafe, like physically unsafe, like I don't know what. And so, and you guys see all my Facebook posts, and
I don't buy that.
So how did that
I think you probably had some uppity liberals say that your post would make people on welfare. You know what I mean? I
don't think anybody. My guess is that probably anyone on welfare. Maybe there were some people on welfare involved. My guess is you're probably more right.
Yeah.
So what is that we're seeing? I mean, it's not like they're shutting everyone up, right? They're seeing who is there to violate the kind of sacred beliefs of the overall community that's there to break the boundaries and let other people do it. And the idea is they see you guys doing it, because you guys don't advocate for violence.
No.
Ever. I've never seen you guys do anything that could possibly... But they shut you down because you have a following, and because you don't play by the rules, and because you don't sort of keep espousing the status quo ideas, right?
And because of Jesus over there, too. I think
And
there was some sort of anti-Semitism going on. I suspect.
Doubt. Well, I mean, that goes without saying, right? but really, what are they trying to do? They're trying to make an example of you. They're trying to make an example of me. They're trying to make an example of every single group that opposes the statism, opposes the welfare state. They're trying to either shut you up socially, deplatform you, ban you, shadow ban you, knock off the Reddit subreddits. They're trying to do whatever they can to stop those ideas. But in my opinion, that's actually really good news. Because they're not doing that to the flat earthers. They're not doing it to the Prohibition Party. Right. They're doing that to anybody who opposes the welfare state because our ideas are catching fire, and they are desperately and not very successfully trying to put that fire out.
That's what actually went down.
Arvin, but Flat Earth has supporters all around the globe.
Yeah, that's true. I saw they pointed that Flat Earthers from all over the globe coming to the convention. I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, Flat Earth is blowing up. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's not a threat, right? It's not going to change their status quo. Here's the thing. I can go and debate with people about the minimum wage, right? On either side. And that's there's two different opinions, and people can argue, right? But when I say that government schools are welfare, there's not two sides to that debate. That's just a description of what it is. Or that killing for the military is murder plus statism. That's just a description. But it violates the sacred beliefs, right? And the second you violate those sacred beliefs, that's when they're going to shut you up. That's when they're going to... Well, you couldn't dox me because everything I do is public anyway. But they're going to try to dox you if you're doing something under a pseudonym. They're going to try to deplatform you. They're going to do whatever they can.
Now, this place that you got kicked out of, you've been going there for a while?
For years.
Wow, years.
Yeah, and it's not that it's... Again, it's not anything that I was saying there, or anything that I was doing there, or anything I was doing anywhere else, right? It's not after thing I would say hey, you're on welfare, I hate you.
What are you saying? Do you think Zuckerberg called in favor?
Maybe. Yeah, when I put zuckcuck.com and made it auto-forward to Facebook for a year, I think maybe he took that personally.
Yeah. That'll do it.
Yeah, and so that's what we're saying. And this is something in my book, Pull Out, that I wrote. It's something that I talked to so many people on college campuses, both people who are just guys in general, or men and women who had either conservative or libertarian beliefs. And they all said the same thing, that if they try to speak, people don't try to debate or disagree with them. They try to just shout them down and shut them up. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what lets you know that your beliefs are dangerous. You don't shut down a belief that's not a threat.
Right, and it also, like, let's say, they felt that your beliefs were deplorable.
Sure.
Wouldn't it be better, wouldn't it ideally be better, and, there's historical precedents for this, to actually allow the ideas to sort of circulate around and then just confront them and address them head on instead of pushing them down and sort of letting them fester, which has happened with all sorts of ideologies, communism, and then you see what happens there. I'm sure there was a lot of that with, a lot of the racist stuff that was going on in Germany. Hitler went to jail.
Yeah.
Instead of just letting these people espouse their ideas, not necessarily saying, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to condone them or say, oh, well, you have a legitimate idea there, but just to confront it on its merits and disprove it. They're doing themselves, like you said, they're doing us a service, and they're doing themselves a disservice by not, addressing it, because it just lets our ideas kind of hang out and sort of develop some grassroots and start to grow.
That's actually very true. The second that not like the very second, but after I put out the video where I just talked about, here's a thing that for my political Facebook post, I was banned from a non-political event. Like I could even see being banned from a political event. I don't think it would be an ideal move, but I would kind of get it. But if you're trying to ban somebody from a non-political event, you're just basically trying to shut them up, and you are doing exactly that. You're creating a separate group. You're not actually allowing the free debate of ideas.
Right.
As soon as that happened, what happened? We got new volunteers. A couple donations came in because other people have experienced this. They haven't experienced it, then immediately gone to Facebook, then immediately come on PRL and talk to everybody about it. But they have experienced it, right? And everyone who's experienced being just shut up, people are shrieking them into silence, saying, no, I'm not going to disagree with you, I'm just going to not let you speak. And we see that even with conservative professors. They'll go and speak in places, and the student bodies will yell and chant and not let the ideas out. That's how afraid they are of the ideas, because they know that the welfare state ideas are bad. In open debate, they'll lose.
Yeah, there's also a conservative push right now against all this, online censorship, because it seems like they're really just silencing anybody that wouldn't have voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. But I think the scary thing about that is it sounds like these people are just begging for the government to come in and regulate social media. And I think if we know anything, it's like anything the government puts their hands on turns to shit.
Yeah.
So they're definitely going to make it worse. And then when they do, they'll just have you begging them to make it better. The people that fucked it up in the first place.
Yeah, it's like make it stop.
Yeah. And so that's where I think there's a big impetus on all of us to try to work with this ethically, right? The organization, it's not a group that I'm going to try to call out by name or anything like that, because while they might have political difference with me as a public figure, I don't view them as a political group, so I'm not going to attack them as a political group or if they're organized or anything like that. That I'm going to leave sort of private, essentially. And I think the same thing with Facebook. When we disagree with Facebook, and we have, I have big disagreements, and I know you guys certainly have big disagreements of being, knocked down and deplatformed. That's totally immoral and unjustified. I think we need to complain about it. I think we need to all organize around other ideas. I think we need to use other social media. I think we need to encourage other social media. But we need to not go to the level of trying to destroy it with government.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. A lot of folks have said, you shouldn't criticize private groups, right? And to me, that's idiotic. If McDonald's comes out with something that doesn't taste good, I'm going to be yeah, that didn't taste good. It's a private organization that made something that tasted bad. And I have every right to criticize, or I might write a movie review. That movie was bad. It was a private movie. It didn't force anyone to go to it, but it was still a bad movie. I think that criticizing is perfectly legitimate.
Yeah. It's not mutually exclusive, to complain about businesses who want to kick you out, even though they have the right to. That still can be a dick move. And as you were saying before, it doesn't make sense why people like a lot of leftists will say the first response is when you get kicked off social media, they'll be like, well, it's a private business, but
well, if someone it is the left doing it to begin with, but then you see libertarians that repeat it. It's just like, what?
I know, it's like, stop.
Like, the whole point of a market is to participate in it. You know, having the freedom to participate, and having that freedom involves being able to criticize, being able to provide feedback, positive or negative. And, you know, I mean, if you say, oh no, just because it's private, like nothing they do can be bad, like you're just misunderstanding the concept.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the key thing. Private, and this is where, and the thing is, this is the scary thing that they don't want us to do, right? Because that private decision-making is what has been working. I mean, like, so we've been going to so many different state parties, right? You really get to, when you drive through the country, you start to notice a lot of things that you might not pick up just being out here in D.C. One of the big ones, you'll often see ads for police recruiting in like a state that's different from the state that they were trying to recruit in. Because they can't get enough people in the state to join the police.
Really?
So they're actually having to go out of state. And I've seen so many, you know, like you'll be in like Virginia or something like that. I'll be like, you know, hey, like South Carolina needs more police. It's gotten to that level because people are making the private decision that, we're not going to be part of that.
Yeah.
Same thing with military. The military is falling so far short of its recruiting numbers because, you know, a lot of folks, a lot of you guys have been talking about, like, listen, this is not really a great thing to do. You know, some people who've been in the military, some people who had never been in the military, are saying, like, this is what's happening.
Right.
And so I think that's what they don't want. They don't want us to recognize that agency because once we recognize that agency, we're not going to play along with their nonsense.
Definitely recruiting's down. They're talking, I think I saw an article that they're trying to reduce it to like 16, like to the age where you could sign up for the military. Recruitment, I saw a couple articles like Seattle Police Department, like police, like major cities are just having so much issues trying to recruit. And I think people are just sick of it. Just today I was at Artscape in Baltimore and they had to recruit Baltimore PD, had like a recruitment tent. It was just like, it's like, who the fuck's going to go to that?
Speaking of Baltimore,
I really want to be a cop in Baltimore. That sounds great.
Speaking of Baltimore police, what happened, I guess, last night, the Baltimore City Police Commissioner got arrested at gunpoint.
They're not, no, he got,
arrested.
I'm sorry, hold on, sorry.
He was robbed at gunpoint.
Robbed at gunpoint,
with his wife in Patterson Park neighborhood.
Yep.
Which is, I mean, it's a pretty nice neighborhood, but you go a couple blocks in either direction, and it could get sketched pretty quick. Yeah, it was held at gunpoint. SUV rolled up, pulled a gun. Yeah.
See, that's another thing.
Like,
I mean, you see like that kind of stuff. How bad, and you're seeing it in Baltimore, much more private police, right? And I'm not saying everything's going perfectly with the private police. I know they have problems, right? I'm the first to admit that. But we're seeing that like that experiment is beginning, and it's doing some things well, it's doing other things maybe not quite so well.
You're seeing the rise in popularity of these, I don't know what you'd call them, but these apps that you can report crimes, and you can report, like if you buy a Ring device, so like these doorbells that you push the button and then they capture video, or they're also motion sensor.
Yeah, but the government knows when you leave your house now.
There is that.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's why I don't get. That's why I have one.
But then I'm also like, I don't know about that. It just seems like another, like an Alexa or just something that's gonna.
I mean, they're already monitoring you. There's already cameras in your neighborhood.
Yeah, but why make it easier? You know, I look at people are like, oh, well, don't do that stupid Facebook or the aging app. It's like they're
all right. Well, ideally, if it was just completely privatized, right? You just like they didn't have any connection with the government. They weren't sending these feeds to the government.
Oh yeah, that'd be much better.
Then that's that would be a good way for a community to sort of police itself or protect itself is a better word. Because with those apps, you can report, okay, this guy came up on my porch, he looks suspicious, keep an eye out for him.
Like the Nextdoor app.
Yeah, like all those kind of apps, while they can be really fucking annoying at times, I think there's, at least, and it's in its early stage too, it still needs to be pruned, it still needs to be developed, but I think those are the beginnings of almost like a privatized self-policing force, if you want to call it that.
Speaking of privatization, I was just on the Nextdoor app, and I get email notifications from a neighborhood, and some lady was bitching about her mail carrier. And it was like, she's like, I sure do miss my old mail carrier. He's like, it's always delivered on time, and this guy doesn't even put it in the box, and my outgoing mail always stays here, and I get mail from the wrong address, and I'm like, well, maybe that's why the postal system should be privatized. I don't know. Kind of making our point.
Like, government sucks. But I think when we really think about law enforcement, right? Law enforcement, dispute resolution, I think the amazing thing is to see how different the private sector looks. Like, the things that we do for dispute resolution right now is not court, it's not mediation even. It's you pick the reason you didn't like the thing from the Amazon drop down, and it sends you a label to print. I mean, that's the idea, is that it shouldn't be so much conflict. It shouldn't be so scary. I mean, the private sector should be able to make it so convenient the way it already has in, like, sales dispute resolution, which for most of history was an acrimonious process, and now is just literally a drop-down menu.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. So we wanted to hit on the presidential race.
Nice.
What are your thoughts on the Democratic candidates?
All right. So you have some things. There's some things that are good. All right.
Yeah.
The idea of pulling out of the Middle East. That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's not shared by everybody, but it's shared by at least one person.
Yeah.
But that's not going far enough. I mean, like, you need to end the idea of military welfare, right? We need to get out of NATO. Because the idea that we need to be providing military support to Europe so that they can be more socialist, it's bad for us because we have to pay for it. I mean, we don't have to pay for it directly. We just need to have a 50 times as big military as we could possibly need for ourselves, and pay for that military. It's bad for them because it's making them more socialist, and that's like sapping the incredible human potential. Think of it like this, right? The United States and Europe has a lot of people who are like genetically related. And all the innovations ever are coming out of the United States, and like 0% are coming out of Europe. And that is because of the socialism of Europe. I mean, you get rid of socialism in Europe, you have like United States Part 2 rather than communist Russia, Part 2 is what we have right now. Mm-hmm. So I would get rid of NATO right now. First thing I would do. The other thing that I see is just bad economics. The idea that AI reduces jobs. That's just not true. I mean, it creates more demand for labor.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that I'm so tired all the time, in addition to the presidential campaign, is that my business, we're doing a lot more AI. And you know what AI does? It makes everything you do more valuable. So now an amount of time spent improving it is worth so much more that there's a massively increased demand on your work.
Right.
So, I mean, honestly, to use an unpleasant example, ever since the cotton gin, we've seen that something that makes labor more efficient increases demand for labor. It doesn't decrease the demand for labor.
Right, exactly.
So, like, you just think Yang's just total scare tactics?
I just think he's wrong. I mean, I just think he's incorrect. It's just bad economics.
Yeah, I listened to him on Rogan, and he definitely pulls it like that. He gets you in emotionally and just thinking, like, with all the truck drivers and everything being automated and going to AI, that there's just going to be no jobs that exist, and he paints this dire picture, and that's why we have to have, like...
Yeah, but Arvin, what would you say to libertarians for Yang? Okay? Collapsitarians, if you will.
Collapsitarians.
So people who say, like, we want to just, like, shut down everything, I mean, yeah, that's a way to... There's a lot of ways to do a thing, right? So one thing that we could do is we could get ourselves armed up, and we could go and, like, start shooting up government buildings. That's a way. Yeah, maybe we get it done.
Let's not say stuff like that.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's like a way. Is that a good way? No, it's a terrible way.
Yeah, it's a bad way.
It's a terrible way. It's a terrible way.
So you're against raiding Area 51?
Oh shit! We're gonna do this.
No, the thing is, like, that is, like, honestly, like, so funny. As long as it's not done violently, as long as you're not shooting people over there, yeah, I think it's fine. I think it's harmless, honestly. But that's a way. Could a total economic collapse and post-apocalyptic meltdown be a way to get to more libertarian? Probably. Is it a good way? No, it's a terrible way.
Yeah, okay.
So in the same way, there's bad ways. There are better ways. Opting out of government school is a better way. Jury nullification is a better way. Bitcoin is a better way. There are a lot of other ways that are not so incredibly disruptive that are going to cause so many economic, physical, health, safety problems as a total collapse of an economic system. Yeah. So while it is a way, it's not my preferred way. Violence is a way, it's just not my way. And so libertarian for Yang, I would say I get you, maybe you think it'll collapse everything, but that's not the best way to do this.
Well, and also, when has a society collapsed and resulted in libertarianism?
It usually results in heavy authoritarianism,
right,
like we saw in the successive many rounds of the French Revolution.
Exactly.
Or in the Russian Revolution.
What about Somalia?
Somalia is an interesting case. I mean, because they are operating without a state, but have essentially tribal governments, and as maybe not wealthy as they are compared to the United States, in a lot of ways are actually wealthier than their immediate neighbors.
Yeah. Once that socialist state collapsed, but no one likes to talk about that. That's what I think is hilarious. Is people always say, "Oh, once you move to Somalia," but they don't tell you why Somalia doesn't have a government. It's because their socialist government collapsed on itself, and then actually people prospered better. Like you said, they were better than their immediate surroundings. Yeah, and I think it's funny, but now I guess we've ruined that country again after
re-ruined.
Re-ruined.
It's hard. I mean, I think I'm a pretty hardworking guy. I have a good business. I put a lot of time into it. But if the U.S. government started drone bombing my house every other day, it would be hard for me to maintain it at its current level of excellence. And I think that applies to people and everywhere. If people are always bombing your house and your business and your hospitals, you're not going to be as productive as a country that's not getting drone striked every 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. So like, what would you say? You just had a debate with Matt Welsh of Reason, right?
Yeah, Matt Welsh moderated. I think he did a great job moderating. He's fair-minded. He's always a very fair-minded moderator, a fair-minded judge.
Yeah.
So I think it's the second or third debate of some kind that I've had with him as moderator.
Dude, Matt, he always reminds me of like my cool older cousin that I had. I always see him at like family get-togethers. He would just go out and smoke pot in the garage or something.
Matt and I met him at Porkfest.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Yeah, I got to talk to him for
he hung out for a bit.
Yeah, he was a totally nice dude.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy. There are definite political differences that we have, and I think this is a perfect example. You know, Matt Welch and I have very obvious political differences, and yet I can respect him. We can debate him. He can, he's interviewed me for Reason. I've talked about him in other places, either disagreeingly but respectfully, or agreeingly. It's not like I disagree with everything. I mean, I agree with him on most things, realistically, right? But there are a few big areas where I disagree. I think this really gets back to that tribal thing we were talking about. Like, do we need to accept tribal beliefs? And I would say of all the phobias that we have, hardwired into our DNA, the biggest one is fear of being cast out by the tribe. Because for 99% of human history, if you were cast out by the tribe, you were going to die.
Yeah.
And so that's like a primal fear. The good thing is now we have capitalism, and so if everyone disagrees with your belief, you can be the most racistest Nazi in the world. You go to Whole Foods, you buy something off Amazon, you're still going to have food. Like, you don't have to share the beliefs of the tribe to not die anymore.
Right, yeah.
And so right now I think that idea has not gotten into the Libertarian Party yet. Right now they're terrified, because we're a smaller number, they're terrified, what happens if we get rejected by the tribe? What happens if we have a candidate that says things like abolish government schools or government schools are welfare, don't sign up for the military, that it is wrong to lower the age of recruitment for signing up for the military, that joining the military is the wrong thing to do. You have somebody that's doing that. Mm-hmm. People are afraid that by proxy, they're going to be rejected from the tribe and they're going to starve to death. It's not a conscious fear, it's a subconscious phobia. Right. And I think that's where a lot of the fascination with Amash has come from, because Justin Amash is somebody who always supports the dominant tribal belief. Justin Amash hates Trump, made no secret of that, and the dominant in city culture, people hate Trump, and he hates government school. I mean, he supports government schools. He's voted to increase funding for DC public schools, to increase funding for DC opportunity scholarships or whatever. The exact opposite position that I hold, but certainly directly opposing opposite view to any classical liberal, minarchist, or anarchist view, but it's within the tribal belief system. So if he's our standard bearer, we don't have to worry about starving to death. But guess what? If I'm the standard bearer, we don't have to worry about starving to death. Your money's still going to work when you go to the supermarket. You're still going to be able to get a job. Right. It doesn't matter what I think. Just like today, people might hate Trump, but Republicans aren't starving to death in the streets because of that.
Right.
So what? So during the debate, like, what makes you different than, say, like, I think Kimberly Ruff, she won the straw poll after that debate.
Yeah.
So what would you say, like, separates you from her and everyone else that was on there?
Separates me from Kim? Not much in terms of policy, right?
Yeah, because I know a lot. I mean, it seemed very unison. A lot of everyone in agreement on certain things. So, like, if people were like, if you were trying to make your pitch to libertarians, like right now, like if they had to pick between like Kim Ruff and you, like what would you say, like, for your sake, as opposed to her? Like, not trying to like put her down or anything, just saying like, what's the difference? Like, what makes you better for this?
I have a lot of respect for Kim, and it's nice to see. It's kind of like nice when you get to see your hard work paying off. Kim in 2016 was one of Daryl Perry's nominators, like the radical of the radical.
Mm-hmm.
Today, she's considered moderate, and it's not because she says anything different. It's because standing next to me, he looks moderate.
Yeah.
And so here's the to me the difference in tactic. This is not me saying my tactic is right and Kim's is wrong, because if Kim was a nominee, I'd be totally happy. If Justin Amash was a nominee, I would be embarrassed. But if Kim was nominated, I'd be like, fantastic. This is something I can get behind, something I can support.
So would Justin Amash be a better nominee than Gary Johnson was?
He would be an identical, exact same nominee as Gary Johnson. Justin Amash has said we don't need a squishy libertarian, and it's true that he's a better public speaker than Gary Johnson. He's a very forceful public speaker. He has a lot of energy when he speaks, and Gary Johnson kind of didn't really seem to have a lot of that. But it's not about how good a public speaker you are. Ron Paul, not a good public speaker. He's just not a great public speaker.
Yeah, but he had sound ideas.
He has sound ideas, and it was electrifying. He electrified a movement. Justin Amash...
Well, wasn't Justin Amash, I believe the whole reason he got into politics was because he was inspired by Ron Paul. And he's kind of known by a lot of people as a young Ron Paul. And isn't he also, a lot of times, the only no vote, just like Ron Paul?
Here's the difference. Amash does the no votes to create what I call political theater, like a theatrical no vote. For example, there was something to fund a not yet existent suicide prevention hotline for veterans, and he voted no, even though he knew it was going to pass. There was no chance of it not passing. It was like everybody to one, and then he got to explain to people that he believes it's a good idea, but the government shouldn't do it, right? So he gets to create the illusion. You see what I mean? This is the illusion of boldness. It's not taking away something, so you're not making people panic. You're just keeping things as they are, which makes people feel safe, but acting bold. Same thing with Trump. He's going after this minor legal thing in the Mueller report, which nobody understands or cares about. And honestly, in a world where every single country is actively either benefiting from or trying to influence U.S. elections, the fact that Russia does it to me is not any better or worse than Israel doing it, than France doing it, than Saudi Arabia doing it,
right.
than all these other countries doing it. I just don't see the difference. So in that area, he's going after an unpopular president, sort of seeming to stand bold. But the true test of character is what happens when he stands up to something that is universally popular, to something that's already here and already accepted. Does he have the courage to take away something that exists? And the answer is always a resounding no.
Well, Jared was saying that he's stunning and brave.
Okay. I disagree with Jared.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, so, And that's where it says, when it comes to this theatrics, he's a great politician. He is strategically probably the smartest I've seen strategically. He was the first to start explaining his votes on social media. He knows how to do modern politics better than anybody. Mm-hmm. But his greatest strength is also his greatest weakness, because he can create the illusion of bravery without bravery. And when it comes to things that would require bravery, no, I'm not voting for more money for public schools need to go, he hasn't said it. He refused to do that. He voted to increase funding. If you look at Ron Paul in public schools online, you do a Google search, here's what you find. A lot of speeches against government schools, books against government schools, articles against government schools, everything, right? Mm. When you look for Justin Amash in the same thing, nothing. And it takes a lot of skill as a politician to not talk about the single biggest program, the single largest domestic program that affects the most people. If you can get away for 10 years and not talk about it, that's a demonstration of political skill, certainly.
Yeah.
But it's not a demonstration of political bravery.
Sure. Yeah, I always liked Thomas Massey much more than Amash. I don't know if his voting record is any different on those matters, but he always just seemed to be consistently way more consistent than Amash or even Rand Paul.
Yeah, I think Massey seems a little more outspoken.
And yeah,
I think
sassy at Massey.
Yeah, and even someone was bringing up Rand Paul blocking the 9/11 funds because yeah, just
because they didn't get to read the bill or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was without.
It was a fucking blank check, man.
Yeah,
that's what's $70 billion.
Actually
it's
went,
crazy.
Or only a small percentage went to victims' families, but of course, all the outrages.
It was just it's a feel good. It was a feel good thing, yeah. And everyone loved it because Jon Stewart, he's up there crying and giving his best acting speech. It's one of those things. If anything, it should be a state issue. I say that, but now I've thought about it lately. I mean, technically 9/11 was in response to federal government, waging war in the Middle East. So maybe it was the federal government's responsibility to take care of these people who...
Well, they knew the building. The EPA knew there was asbestos in like 3/4 of between the two towers. So they're all breathing that shit in.
I know. They were told like, no, don't worry about it.
Negligent.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like it was more like it was like a blank check, and I think I'm so glad that someone stood up and said this was bullshit. Like we should be like this shouldn't just go through just because John Stewart's up there crying about it.
When you say it's the government's responsibility, it's just totally false because the government doesn't have any money that they don't steal.
I know. But I just like to point out like it gives me a chance to sit there and say, well, the reason why we were attacked on 9/11 was from actions directly resulting from United States foreign policy over the past 50 years. Gives me a chance to say something like that.
Yeah, maybe it's like Halliburton's responsibility.
Right?
Seriously. And so, I mean, like, and what you're saying, I think has a decent amount of support. But even there, see, you need to have, like, political courage and you need to have social courage. And it's not just because courage is good. It's because if you don't have it, you end up making really idiotic decisions. Here's a bill that passed unanimously in the House. This is a unanimous House vote. And no opposition vote, including from all the Tea Party darlings, all the LP darlings in the House. Unanimous vote was a vote to spend law enforcement time, money, and resources on child sex dolls, which, of course, since the resources are limited, you need to take that away from actual children who are actually being trafficked. And if you want to know where the most children are being trafficked, it's, of course, in the government-run foster care system. So the fact that the government vote is unable to do it, is making mistakes, you could say, with the foster care system, but then also just being boneheaded stupid in their allocation of resources. I mean, that to me is a thing that needs to be called out. Is it scary to call it out?
Yeah. I feel like you just squirted a Liberty load all over these sacred cows.
I like to think it's more like executing, but your thing works too. Because your thing just sounds like there's going to be a lot of like half Liberty, half status minotaurs around. I don't know how I feel about minotaurs.
Oh, that's so
gross. You mean Gary Johnson?
Sure.
Boom.
Ouch.
In your face.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, you can't, if you're not willing to stand up to like the dominant tribal beliefs, then you're going to get bad decision making. You're going to make decisions that don't make sense because you're afraid of being called some kind of a name or being saying you're not patriotic enough or whatever. And that's the kind of nonsense. And that is coming from that fear that says if I don't accept the tribal beliefs, I'm going to die. No, you're not. In a capitalist economy, we're free of that. That's the greatest gift of capitalism. We are free of having to pretend to believe nonsense. We are free of having to kowtow to any collective because we have capitalism now.
Hell yeah. Well said. All right. So there's been some developments with Iran lately. Phil?
Yeah, it's mostly like a cat and mouse game of Iran is saying, or the United States said that Iran shot down a drone and then they're saying, well, the United States accidentally shot down their own drone. It wasn't us who shot it down. And it's just been this back and forth, and apparently they seized the ship, a British oil tanker going through their waters. It's like a cat and mouse game. And then now, I think it was just yesterday, they came out saying they're sending out more troops to Saudi Arabia. It has like a gesture like to threaten, Iran. It's this weird policy that we've had with Iran that it's like they were part of the deal. They were living up to their end of the bargain of this deal. And then Donald Trump says, we got to get out of it. We get out of it. And then we get mad at Iran for then saying, well, you're not letting us sell off I forget exactly what they were, because of the sanctions, they weren't allowed to sell off.
There was an embargo.
What is it?
I guess the EU had a trade embargo with Iran, and one of their oil tankers on July 4th, Iran's oil tankers was, boarded and seized in the Mediterranean.
Right, yeah.
Going to Syria.
What an
because they were sanctioned.
Date.
Yeah, right? On July 4th.
What are the odds?
Yeah, so it was seized, and then so now the response, just the most recent event, the British oil tanker was seized by the Iranian Navy right off their coast. So it's like just this back and forth.
And I'm just getting really sick and tired of it. Like, it's just this pissing contest, and it's like, let them do what they were doing before. I mean, they were living up to the end of the bargain until the United States decided to drop out of it because of Donald Trump. And speaking back about, we were talking about Rand Paul. Like Rand Paul said, I guess they were at a golf. It was at a golf outing with Senator Graham and Rand Paul and Donald Trump. And apparently, from what the insider talk was, and I think it was later confirmed, that Rand Paul wants to be kind of like the ambassador to the relationship talks between Iran and the United States. And apparently, Graham was going off telling Donald Trump at this golf outing, like, hey, you know, we need to stay in Iran. We need to be hostile to him. And he'd go up and take a shot while Rand Paul and Donald Trump were like laughing at him, saying, yeah, you're stupid. Like, no, we need to de-escalate. And it's a weird thing. Like, Trump goes so hard on Iran. Like, that was like, remember when he ran for president? That was one of the biggest things he talked about Iran. And then now he's like, well, maybe we shouldn't strike them after they shot down our drone. And it's just a weird back and forth. And yeah, I hope Rand Paul's...
It seems like Trump kind of saved us from like some sort of like huge war with Iran. Because like, I feel like in any other, if this happened under any president, having the drone getting shot down, like right next to the border or whatever, I feel like it would have been war with Iran under any other president.
Well, you have to look at this. Like, who benefits from these wars, right? It's not the American people.
Yeah, the arms company.
Northrop Grumman.
Right? They benefit, right? And so, if anybody shot down the drone on purpose, it was almost certainly somebody who realized that Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, I don't know if it's necessarily one of those specific companies, but, I mean, if I had no ethics of any kind and I was running a defense company, I would do it. I mean, it's not like it's a terrible business strategy. It's immoral. It's horrific in that sense, but it's, you know, business-wise strategic. And when you look at what arms companies are doing here, they're spending so much money lobbying Congress. You know, way back during the Iraqi surge, in like 6 weeks, they spent about $50,000 per congressman and senator on lobbying. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that they're doing so openly. And it's insidious. One of the things that in my educational business we've been wrestling with. So Raytheon, Department of Defense, and a couple other defense contractors, they fund a thing called Math Counts, which is like a math program. And of course, the subtext is learn as much as you can about math, but don't learn anything about morality or ethics or anything like that. We'll tell you what to do. You do the math, build us the weapons. Don't worry about what we do with them. And so any organization that is
3 nuclear warheads, and if you take 2 away and destroy his country,
it's like a huge competition. I mean, it's from a math side, it's fantastic. But you know, we for our students, we actually have a video that they watch beforehand, and we don't say that because again, I don't believe in indoctrination, right? So we don't say that it's good or bad to have this view. We're saying this is a view you need to question and you need to think about. Here are some types of philosophy that exist in the world you might want to start looking at. But the idea that you just do the math, keep your brain off, and like we'll handle what happens with the results, that to me is a very toxic approach to education. And of course, you have the DoD, the Department of Defense, and Northrop Grumman, and Raytheon, and a couple other defense contractors that are involved as like the major backers of this competition.
It's crazy, man. Foreign policy these days are ridiculous. Like, and I don't know if you guys heard what's happening with Turkey. Apparently, like Turkey bought, they wanted some of our like Patriot missiles, and they were like, no, we're not giving it to you, because they also wanted like the technology for it as well. Mm-hmm. And so they went ahead and they bought the version of the Patriot missile. But what's crazy is that's against, they're in NATO, and they can't do that. And there was a law that was just passed in 2017 that says any country that has business with Russia, they automatically sanctions. Like, no other wording, no nothing. It's like you have to have sanctions against you. So now they're pissed because they're making parts of the F-35s that they're trying to push for, and they already pay for them. So now they're saying, we're not giving you your F-35s. You're not allowed to have them because we can't bring them to you. It's just this whole debacle. Now we have to put sanctions on Turkey. Like, it's just crazy. It's like this cycle of bullshit. And it's like, it's gonna escalate, and eventually it'll lead us to some type of confrontation with somebody. It's insane. And it's like, that's why it's like, it's almost so confusing. That's why I understand, like, why normal people don't care. They're just like, wow, yeah, let the experts handle that. Like, I can't wrap my head around that. And that's all I've been trying to do these past few years, is trying to wrap my head around it. I'm like, no wonder we're in the problems that we have in this country, like, or around the world. It's just insane.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like the problem is right now the experts aren't like trying to help us. They're trying to take advantage of us to help themselves. And that's where we get into these things that they're enriching defense companies, but impoverishing us. They're damaging us physically, psychologically, morally, financially, you name it. It's hurting us.
And most normies and NPCs will tune into the mainstream media and then the quote-unquote experts. You see their background, it's like retired general, retired admiral, advisor to, and it's like, and then you look at their background and they're all like on board of directors or somehow involved in these, weapons deals or work for these work for the military-industrial complex. So of course, no matter what, they're going to give you the line, and they're retired military, so they have everything to gain personally from these conflicts. They don't give a shit about but people, they can't make that connection that this is all just a psyop. This is all just basically a military operation and just propaganda to escalate these situations and for you to buy into the military-industrial complex.
People look at the old, join and fight the German posters from
World
War II and be like, oh man, people are so stupid, I can't believe they believe that. But today, we're fighting, it's just it's 50 countries, it's 50 times stupider right now than people were who believed those posters. And that's the kind of stuff, that's the direct result of this kind of education that we're seeing, whether it's, defense contractors invading mathematics curricula, or what you were saying with military recruitment, people are trying to push that down to 16. I mean, that's horrific. I mean, that's just sick. And so you see all this working together, and you realize these are not people who care about us. No. They just care about themselves, and they're afraid of anyone who goes against their tribal belief system. If we go around saying enlisting the military is wrong, it takes away their tool, which is that the universal acceptance that a soldier is always a hero, and therefore their actions are always right and always heroic no matter what.
I posted a meme on Instagram, and it said, the real human traffickers are the military recruiters. Yeah. And just the amount of just crying coming back from people oh, not actually. Oh, no, that's not right. It's, first off, it's a joke. Relax, calm down. But in some sense, it's true.
Is it though?
It's a joke, but it's there to trigger a thought reaction out of you, whether it's humorous or not. But clearly, everybody has no sense of humor, and they just rush to their you can't attack the military. You can make jokes making fun of this politician or this, but how dare you say something about the troops?
It's slimy to recruit 16-year-old kids.
It is. It is to go kill everyone and get free stuff.
It's slimy to recruit anybody to fight in an unjust war, but 16-year-old kids, and they were doing it when we were in school. They had the ROTC and all that.
And the JROTC, that's unbelievable what going on there. Because you got people who are 14. Be getting military recruiter pitches. I don't know how smart you guys were when you were 14 years old, but I was, to a certain extent, I thought war was cool. You know what I mean? I would see clips of smart bombs, yeah, that was awesome, because I was a teenage boy.
Yeah, things blow up. You like fireworks.
You're barely a moral actor at that point.
Yeah, and so the idea that somebody could have come to my school and been listen, you can travel all over the world and just blow stuff up, and I would have been yeah, that sounds awesome. That to me is exactly morally wrong. And that's why when people say, we need to have the government protect kids, no, because the government never protects kids. Either takes advantage of them actively through recruiting, or just fails to protect them in the foster care system, or just is idiotically wasting money that should be going, if you believe that government should be doing it, idiotically wasting money on protecting dolls instead of people. It's so backwards.
I actually changed my mind on war at a very young age.
Nice.
Because I was brought up in, a socially conservative household, Reagan Republican, yada, 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 stuff like that. But I remember when I was 10 years old, I mentioned to my father that, when I grow up, I want to join the military. And he actually said, all the words there are bullshit, So then that just got me thinking. And it was what is a just war? Not fighting for oil in the Persian Gulf or whatever, going on at the time. And then from that point on, I just paid attention to all the wars and thought, I've never seen a just war that the United States has participated in. It's always just world policing. And why would you want to send your kids over to die in that?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's also one thing too. I credit going to Catholic schools from a young age. They were taught, we're anti-Catholics, we're anti-war, we're anti-death penalty, we're against abortion, we're against
pro-diddling.
Yeah, they'll screw you behind, in the back of the church. But yeah, we're against these things, and that's where I grew up, and that's where I grew up learning. And so when after 9/11 happened, I was in high school, and the ramp up to war, and I just was, being into punk music, everyone was very anti-war, anti-government, and so it kind of felt right to me. I'm like, well, I'm against the war, and I've always had that in me from early teenage years, and I'm glad I never, because I might have ended up that way. I wasn't great in school, I had no real ambitions, and I might have ended up in a military role, and I'm glad I didn't. I'm not saying it would be the worst thing in the world, but it's close to it, in my opinion now. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like right now,
yeah. There are probably worse things than murdering a lot of kids overseas, but they're not like a lot of worse things.
Right.
It's pretty bad, hospitals and shit.
Yeah, I remember during the Obama administration, at one point, they'd actually blown up a hospital where Doctors Without Borders was working. And what was so telling about it was that Doctors Without Borders had actually contacted the Air Force beforehand to let them know they were working there. Such was the reputation of the United States military that they were like, listen, don't bomb this hospital. And the Obama administration afterwards, they basically said, sorry, we didn't mean to bomb that hospital. We were trying to bomb the right hospital. And I'm like, what the hell is the right hospital to bomb? Like, what kind of strategy are we doing? What kind of morality do we have where there's no, we were trying to bomb the correct hospital, not the incorrect hospital. Sorry, guys, we bombed the wrong hospital. That to me, if we're that far gone, like, there are very big and deep and serious moral issues we need to really be thinking about.
Right. Well, then they'll just say, well, they were hiding. They were hiding behind a bunch of the kids. That's why we had to bomb the school, because that's where they were setting up camp. And we had no choice.
You don't get the bad guy. Sometimes you say killing a bunch of kids to kill one dude is not reason. That's not okay. That's not at all okay. It's like, think of how we treat ourselves supposedly. I don't think we're living up to this, but we believe that it is better to let 100 guilty people go free than to lock up one innocent person. Right. Like, that's a belief that we have.
Yeah.
Here, for our justice and for ourselves. Why is it different over there where we say, why can't we say it is better to let 100 adults who are terrorists go free than to bomb one kid?
Yeah, if we operated domestically like that, it would be like, terrorists attack a school. They just blow up the school.
Mm-hmm. It's
pretty insane.
Yeah, and it's just totally wrong.
Yeah, life is cheap over in the Middle East.
Apparently, according to the U.S. government,
but they're just Muslims. Like, so what does it matter? They're barbaric and ancient in their thought. Like, that's what we're fed about Muslims. And like, no one talks about Shia, and they talk Sunni, and they talk about divisions within that, and about how, like, think about it. We helped, going back to Iran. Iran helped us fight Saddam Hussein because they were mortal enemies, and we just went in there and empowered Iran by invading Iraq. Like, it's insane. But you're not really told the differences. Like, everyone says, oh, it's fine. The Saudi Arabians are fine because no one in the media is saying anything bad about Saudi Arabia until they killed Khashoggi, and that was the only time that I ever heard anything bad. Right?
Here's the thing with Saudi Arabia. What do you have? You have a not very intelligent, not very skilled, theocratic dictatorship that could not survive due to sheer incompetence. They would be overthrown in 5 seconds, but they have the U.S. military backing.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we have in Iran? Until recently, when our bombing every single country all the time further radicalized a lot of countries, Iran had in science and technology, computer science, at the university level, more women than men actually in those areas. They were progressive in every possible way. They were not a backwards culture.
No.
Now, of course, when you start bombing everybody and like one person says like, I and God are going to protect you from these people who are bombing you, but you might need to be a martyr, but that's cool. Don't worry about the afterlife. It's going to be pretty sweet. Like, when you terrorize people like that constantly, and I'm using that word terrorize very intentionally, when the United States terrorizes other countries, by bombing them at random, you radicalize them in bad ways. You put them into a fear mindset instead of a progressive mindset. So after we started bombing them, things started changing. They banned women from all higher education because the more insanely conservative theocratic groups took over. All of these things went backwards. This didn't happen in the 1920s. This happened like 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. But think about it. Same things happen. You correlate it to 1920s Germany. You know, you got rid of all the old establishment, the Kaiser and everything else, and then they propped up the Weimar Republic, and shit was going crazy. There was like civil war, people were fighting in the streets, and then you got this guy Hitler saying, I can completely reverse the Treaty of Versailles. Mm-hmm. I can make us be a proud nation again. I can help you. You're sitting in the streets. I'll help you. Join me. Put on this brown shirt and beat the shit out of any communist or anyone else, and like, we're gonna do this, and this is how it inspired people. It inspired the German people, and that's how they rose to. That's how he rose to power. And think about the same way is what's going on now. Like, I can help you. We can defeat this invader on Holy Land. We can defeat them. We need your help. Yeah. And the afterlife is going to promise you this and this and this. And after so many times, your cousin, your son, your uncle, people just dropping dead around you from bombs, coming from the United States, paid for by all of us sitting here. Yeah. They're going to be like, oh, they're all guilty, and they're all responsible, and I'll do whatever it takes to take out as many as I can.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's where I think we need to think about leading by example, right? If we can set an example of peacefulness, we're not invading other countries, we're not bombing other countries. People look up to us. People across countries that we're not actively bombing, people generally look up to us. They're like, oh, they got cool movies, great music, amazing technology. We want to be more like them. Oh, look, they have equal rights for men and women. Maybe we should do the same thing. Now, when we start terrorizing people, what do they say? They say, I don't want to be anything like those people. They have equal rights for men and women. We need no rights for women. And so this country that was so prosperous, so progressive, that had more women than men even in science and technology, computer science, in which even America doesn't have. I mean, they were like ahead of America in that particular regard. They're like, yeah, we don't want to be like that. We're going to stop being anything like America because we hate them. They have equal rights for women. We're going to have no rights for women. And through our actions, instead of them wanting to follow our good examples, they're throwing out all the good examples that we're setting.
Yeah. So I know this is going to be kind of like someone in the comment section mentioned they're like talk about something more controversial like immigration, illegal immigration. So how would Arvin Vor as president, how would we handle this? Would we have kids in cages separated from families?
Kids in cages. What are you going to do about kids in cages?
I know it's a real loaded question.
When you're asking a question like, did we bomb the right hospital or the wrong hospital? Should we lock kids in cages or not? It means that like something has gone like really very fundamentally at a very deep level wrong, right? If we're thinking about, if that's like a thing to think about, and the thing is this is a political debate right now. And you have people on both sides of the, should we lock kids in cages and separate them from their families? No, we shouldn't. We shouldn't be doing that to American citizens either. Right now, if we talk about all the what's going on in foster care, kids getting sex trafficked and all that, where are all these kids coming from? They're just like appearing, just spontaneously appearing? No. Their parents are often arrested and put in jail for victimless non-crimes. Their kids are put in, maybe not a cage, but in not their parents' house. Then they're sex trafficked, which is a pretty horrible thing to do to somebody. And then often they end up, in prostitution and whatnot, and then they themselves end up in a cage. We need to stop that process everywhere. When it comes to immigration, this is not working. Whatever we're doing right now is not working.
Clearly.
So what do I propose? Real simple. End all welfare. No welfare of any kind. And open the borders. And if you want to come here, if you want to come here and starve to death, fine, come here and starve to death. If you want to come here and work, we'd probably like that better. Come here and work. Come here and start a great business. Come here and start a great business.
Thank you. Because you've really got the Republicans saying build a wall, and then you've got the Democrats saying, yeah, just give them all a bunch of free shit. We'll just make you pay for it. And nobody is saying what you just said. And libertarians need to be heard on that. Because there's really just these like two utterly retarded points of view. Neither of them are right. And
And I think this is where you were asking earlier about strategy. How mine might be different from Amash, might be different from Kim Moss, different from Adam Kokesh. I'm controversial. I'm a controversial type of guy.
What?
With your strategy too. I mean, it's just get to point out that with your strategy, the way you would do it, you would attract people that are going to come here to work, not people that are coming here to move.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. Ever since I've been, when I'm out there and talking about things, people respond. Not always positively, but they respond. They yell about it. They tell their grandparents about it. And sometimes their grandparents are like, yeah, that's terrible. And their grandparents tell somebody else. But somebody down that line is like, oh, that's awesome. And so the thing is I don't give people ideas that you can just politely ignore. Be like, oh, that's an interesting idea. When I say, yeah, you can come over here and starve to death here rather than there, or you can come over here and work, that is something that is harder to ignore than a very, very long-winded and complicated whatever. And I guarantee this, if I'm the nominee, and I do hope to be the nominee, the political debate, the political discourse in this country is going to be about what I want it to be about. If there's one thing I've shown, hopefully the LP, that I do know how to do, is make a large group of people discuss the topics that I want them to discuss for however long I want them to discuss it.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely something we need.
Definitely.
Anything else you wanted to hit on today?
Yeah, I guess it'd be a good time to tell folks about our Patreon and the After Hours program. If you contribute a minimum of $1 per month, you will gain access to our After Hours podcast, which we record right after this one. We also have T-shirts over at libertariancountry.com. If you type in the code PRL or the code PRL podcast, you'll receive a 10% discount. Arvin, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, man. It's always great, dude. Until next time, live free
Or die.